All right, so today we're going deep on something pretty unusual. Curing room worker. You might be thinking, what is that, right?
It doesn't exactly scream high tech, does it?
Not really, but that's what makes it so interesting. This isn't your typical office job. We're talking about the folks who turn raw tobacco into, well, the cigars and chewing tobacco you see out there.
It's a pretty fascinating process when you get down to it.
It is, and we're lucky enough to have some insights from RoleCatcher for this deep dive. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, they've got like, what is it, 3,000 career guides or something like that?
Something like that, yeah. And they use AI for resume analysis, which is pretty cool. But what I really like is how they dig into the whole industry, not just the job itself.
Yeah, like those industry trends sections. Really makes you think.
Okay, so let's get into this curing room worker thing. What do these folks actually do? Paint the picture for us.
So basically, they're the ones who blend, age, and ferment the tobacco. They're like the masterminds behind those distinct flavors and aromas. It's very hands-on, very detail-oriented.
That's like a craft, almost.
Absolutely. They have to carefully monitor the moisture, the temperature, making sure everything is just right. It's all about precision.
Interesting. I wouldn't have pictured it as such a meticulous process.
Oh, it definitely is. And here's something you might not expect. They need to be good at something called operations monitoring. Basically, they're watching gauges, dials, that kind of thing.
Wait, really? So there's a technical side to this, too.
Yeah, it's more than just working with your hands. You have to be able to interpret data, make sure everything's running smoothly.
Wow, I'm already surprised, and we're just getting started. So for someone who's drawn to this kind of work, what are the upsides and downsides?
Well, RoleCatcher breaks it down really well. I mean, on the plus side, you get that satisfaction of creating something tangible, mastering a traditional craft. There's a certain appeal to that, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. It's like being part of something bigger, you know?
Exactly. But of course, there are challenges. The exposure to tobacco itself can be a health risk, and let's be real, some of the tasks can get repetitive. Plus, career progression might be limited in such a specialized field.
Right, trade-offs, right. So how does someone in this line of work navigate those trade-offs? How do they actually build a career out of this?
So RoleCatcher actually lays out these different career stages, which I found really interesting. You've got your entry-level junior curing room worker, and then senior. It's like a progression, right?
Okay, so what does that look like, moving up the ranks? What are the big differences between those stages?
Well, at the entry level, it's a lot of learning the ropes. You're making sure the tobacco's handled properly, stored correctly. Think of it like you're assisting with those quality control checks, but you're not necessarily the one making the big decisions yet.
Right, getting a feel for things.
Exactly. Then you move into that junior role, and that's where you start to have a bit more ownership. You're conducting those quality control checks, maybe even making adjustments based on what you're seeing.
So you're building on that foundation from the entry level.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where it gets really cool. When you hit that senior curing room worker level, that's where the technology really comes in.
Oh, really? How so?
They're using data analysis. Can you believe that? Like actually looking at humidity levels, fermentation rates, trying to optimize the whole process.
Wow, that's pretty high tech for something like tobacco curing. I have to admit, I'm impressed. What kind of impact are we talking about here?
I mean, think about it. They can spot problems before they even happen. Let's say there's a recurring issue with the humidity at a certain stage. They can use that data to adjust and prevent any losses. It's all about being proactive.
So it's like they're combining that traditional knowledge with all these modern tools.
Exactly. And speaking of modern, this ties into something else RoleCatcher mentioned about industry trends. The tobacco industry, it's changing, right? There's this big push towards less harmful products now because of all the health concerns.
So it's like this whole industry is kind of at a crossroads, right?
Yeah.
Trying to keep those traditions alive, but also adapt to this whole new landscape.
Yeah.
What does that mean for someone who wants to be a curing room worker?
It means you gotta be willing to learn and adapt constantly. That's what RoleCatcher kept emphasizing, actually.
Which makes sense. Any job, really, but especially in a field that's, been around for centuries.
Exactly. You can't just rely on the way things have always been done. Technology's changing the game everywhere you look.
It makes you wonder, like, what's next, right? For them, for other industries, even for us.
Right. I mean, who would have thought data analysis would be so important in tobacco curing? It just goes to show technology can pop up in the most unexpected places.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive. We covered a lot of ground, from the ins and outs of tobacco curing to the surprising ways technology is changing the game.
It's been a fascinating look at how tradition and innovation can actually work hand in hand.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So if you're interested in learning more about curing room workers, and let's face it, who isn't after this conversation, we'll be sure to link to RoleCatcher in the show notes.
They've got some seriously in-depth stuff. It's worth checking out.
Until next time, everybody, keep exploring.